He snatched his newborn daughter from Maya's trembling arms and placed her against his mistress's chest. "She'll feed her," he said. "This one's just staff." His mother nodded from the corner. 3 nurses froze. Nobody moved. Maya lay there bleeding, watching in silence. On her wrist, a band that read staff. And not one of them realized what they had just taken from her. The delivery had lasted 14 hours. 14 hours of sweat soaking through hospital sheets, of Maya gripping the cold metal side rail until the edges left grooves in her palms, of breathing through contractions that tore through her body like fire dragging itself across every nerve she had left. The lights above her were too bright. The room smelled like antiseptic and sweat. The monitors beeped in a rhythm that felt like a countdown. And when the baby finally came, when the doctor lifted that warm, screaming, perfect little girl onto Maya's chest, the room should have been filled with joy. It should have been the moment where everything she'd been through finally made sense, where the pain dissolved into something sacred, where the man she married looked at her with tears in his eyes and whispered that she'd done it. It wasn't, because Adrian was already moving. He didn't look at Maya, didn't kiss her forehead, didn't squeeze her hand, didn't say a single word to the woman who had just pushed his child into the world with her body breaking apart beneath her. He reached down, slid his hands under the baby while the umbilical cord was still being clamped, and lifted her off Maya's chest like he was picking up a package that had been delivered to the wrong address. Maya's arms were still open, still shaking, still reaching. He carried the baby across the room to the woman standing near the door. Vanessa. She was dressed like she belonged there. Cream silk blouse, gold hoop earrings, hair freshly braided and pinned. She didn't look like someone who'd wandered into the wrong room. She looked like someone who'd been rehearsing for this moment. She opened her arms and took the baby like it was hers, like she'd been counting down the months, the weeks, the hours. Vanessa adjusted the child gently against her chest, her fingers steady, practiced. Then, almost under her breath, too quiet for anyone but herself, she murmured, "I wasn't going to be the woman left behind again." She sat in the cushioned recliner by the window, undid her top button, and pressed Maya's newborn daughter to her bare skin. The baby latched. Maya watched from the bed. Her arms were still floating in the air. Her hospital gown was soaked. Her body was trembling, and no one, not the nurses, not the doctor, not the man she'd given 7 years of her life to, moved to stop it. Adrian turned to the head nurse. His voice was calm, almost rehearsed, controlled in the way only a man who has practiced a lie can sound. "The woman in the bed is household staff," he said. "She was our surrogate. The arrangement was informal. We're handling it privately. My wife is right here." He pointed at Vanessa. "She's the mother." The nurse looked at Maya. Maya looked back. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Not because she didn't have the words, but because her body was too broken, her mind too stunned. She had just given birth, and her husband was erasing her before the blood had even dried on the sheets beneath her. Gloria stepped forward from the corner. Adrian's mother. She'd been sitting there through the entire labor, arms crossed, one leg over the other, watching the birth like it was an inconvenience she'd been forced to attend. She walked up to the nurse's station with her reading glasses perched on her nose and lowered her voice just enough to sound concerned. Medical concerned. The kind of tone people use when they want to sound like they're protecting someone. "The girl has emotional problems," she said. "We've been managing her for months. She becomes attached. Please, for the baby's safety, don't leave her alone with the infant." That was all it took. Within the hour, Maya's wristband had been replaced. The original one said mother, the new one said staff. She was moved from the private recovery suite, the one with the recliner and the warming bassinet and the call button within arm's reach, to a shared ward 2 floors down. No one explained it. No one apologized. No one even told her it was happening. They just wheeled her bed out while she was still bleeding through the gown, rolled her down a hallway that smelled like industrial cleaner, and parked her in a room with 3 other women who didn't look up. Vanessa stayed in the private room. With the baby. With the soft lighting and the flowers someone had ordered ahead of time. With the warm blanket the nurses brought without being asked, and the tray of food that appeared like clockwork every 4 hours. And Gloria stood guard at the door, like a woman who had finally gotten what she wanted. That night, Maya walked to the nursery floor. Her legs could barely hold her weight. Every step sent pain shooting through her pelvis, up her spine, across her lower back, like someone was pulling her apart from the inside. She held the wall with one hand and her IV pole with the other, and kept walking. Down the corridor. Past the vending machines, past the station where 2 nurses sat filling out paperwork without looking up. She stood behind the glass partition and watched Vanessa sitting inside the room, rocking her daughter in a chair that should have been Maya's, feeding her, humming to her, running a finger along the baby's cheek like she had any right to touch something that sacred. Maya's milk had come in hours ago. Her gown was damp. Her chest ached with a fullness that had nowhere to go. Her body was calling for the child it had just made, and that child was behind a wall of glass in the arms of a stranger. She pressed her forehead against the glass and closed her eyes. Beneath her hospital gown, hidden against her skin, hung a small copper locket on a thin chain. She reached for it and held it tight. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She already knew what was inside, and she already knew what she was going to do. To understand Maya, you have to go back. Not to the hospital, not to the marriage, further. 14 years earlier, a small town outside Atlanta. The kind of place where everybody knew each other's business before breakfast, and the same church on the corner held every funeral, every wedding, every revival worth remembering. The houses were small, the lawns were patchy, and the mailboxes leaned like they'd been standing too long in the same wind. Maya grew up in a 2-bedroom house at the end of a gravel road. No father, gone before she could form a memory. No mother past the age of 6. Cancer took her fast, and nobody in the family had the insurance to fight it. Just her grandmother. Nettie. Nettie was the kind of woman who ironed her church dress on Saturday night and had Sunday's greens simmering on the stove by sunrise. She cleaned houses for wealthy families during the week, scrubbed their floors, folded their laundry, smiled when they forgot her name. Then she'd come home, take her shoes off at the door, and tend the small garden plot she kept in the backyard, like it owed her something beautiful. She never made more than enough to keep the lights on. Never once missed a day of work. She raised Maya with 2 rules. The first she said out loud every time the girl came home upset from school or from a world that didn't seem to want her. Never let someone's cruelty make you forget your worth. She said it while braiding Maya's hair, while folding laundry, while stirring a pot that would feed them both for 3 days. She said it so many times it stopped sounding like a lesson and started sounding like a lullaby. The second rule she only said once. Late one night when Maya was 12 years old, sitting on the porch steps after a boy at school had stood up in the cafeteria and called her poor in front of 40 kids who laughed. Maya hadn't cried at school. She'd waited until she got home. Until she was safe. Until Nettie sat down beside her on that wooden step and didn't touch her, just sat close enough for Maya to feel the warmth, and said, "Silence isn't weakness, baby. Silence is aim." Maya never forgot that. She was smart, not loud smart. Not the kind of smart that raised its hand first and needed everyone to hear the answer. The kind of smart that sat in the back of the class, watched everything, took notes no one ever asked to see, and scored higher than every other student in the room without making a sound. She earned scholarships the way other kids earned bruises. Quietly, constantly, without anyone noticing the weight of it. Valedictorian. in a cap that was 2 sizes too big because the school ordered the wrong one and Nettie couldn't afford a replacement. Maya wore it anyway, held her head high so it wouldn't slip during the speech. In college, Maya studied computer science. She wasn't the most social student on campus, wasn't the loudest voice in the study group, but she had a mind that saw patterns other people missed. Systems inside systems, connections between things that looked unrelated until she pulled the thread. In her junior year, she built a small software tool. Nothing flashy, just a back-end infrastructure product that optimized how data systems communicated. She licensed it to a mid-sized company for pocket change. Then another company noticed, then another. Then a venture capital firm started asking who built it. By the time she graduated, Maya had quietly filed patents on 3 separate platforms. She didn't throw a party, didn't post about it. She folded the paperwork into a drawer in her apartment, poured a glass of water, and kept going. Over the next decade, Maya built something enormous, and she did it in total silence. Shell companies registered in Delaware under names no one would connect to a young black woman from a gravel road in Georgia. Silent partnerships with firms in London and Singapore. Licensing agreements that passed through layers of holding companies so clean and so deep that even the lawyers at the top didn't know who was at the bottom. She never put her face on anything, never did an interview, never attended a launch party or accepted a tech award or stood on a stage. She hired people to be the faces. Smart, polished, confident people who thought they were running things. They weren't. Maya ran everything. From a laptop, from a kitchen counter, from the back room of whatever apartment she happened to be living in at the time. The copper locket around her neck, that was Nettie's. She'd given it to Maya the day she left for college. Inside was a faded photograph of Nettie standing in front of the first house she ever cleaned. Apron on, hands folded, eyes steady, spine straight. Nettie pressed the locket into Maya's palm and told her, "Whenever the world tries to tell you what you are, you open this and remember where you started." Maya wore it through every deal, every negotiation, every silent acquisition that moved millions without making a headline. Through her wedding, through her pregnancy, through labor. It never came off. That's how she met Adrian. Not as a billionaire, not as a mogul, as a woman in a yellow sundress at a summer cookout, laughing at a joke someone told about burnt ribs and pretending the potato salad wasn't dry when everybody knew it was. Adrian was charming, confident in the way men are when they believe the world owes them more than it's given. He drove a clean car, wore good shoes, and talked like a man who thought volume was the same thing as value. Mid-level manager at a logistics company. The kind of job that sounded important at dinner parties but meant nothing in a boardroom. Maya liked him, not because he was powerful, because he wasn't. She liked the idea that someone could love her without knowing what she had, that someone could look at her in a sundress and flip-flops and think, "That's enough." She wanted to be chosen for who she was, not what she was worth. So she never told him. She wore simple clothes, drove a used Honda, let Adrian believe she did freelance IT consulting from home. He never asked for specifics. He didn't care. He liked being the provider, liked being the one who paid for dinner, liked the way people looked at him when he walked into a room first and held the door for her second. Maya let him have all of it. The spotlight, the credit, the pride. Because the woman who would one day be called just staff in front of her own child had already built a technology empire that generated more revenue in a single quarter than most countries see in a year. And her husband didn't even know her real name was on the building he drove past every morning on his way to work. The weeks after the hospital were worse than the delivery. Adrian brought Vanessa home, not to a guest room, not to the sofa, to the master bedroom, their bedroom, the room where Maya's slippers still sat beside the bed and her lotion still rested on the nightstand. He moved Maya's things while she was still recovering, folded her clothes into a suitcase, dropped it in the back room near the laundry. The room with no window, no mirror, and a mattress that had been in storage since before they moved in. He closed the door behind him without saying a word. Maya stood in the hallway, one hand on the wall to keep herself upright, her body still torn and swollen from childbirth, and watched her husband carry another woman's perfume into the room they used to share. Vanessa moved in like she'd always been there. She rearranged the bathroom counter, changed the sheets to a color she preferred, put her silk robe on the hook behind the door. She used Maya's coffee mug without asking, sat in Maya's chair at the kitchen table. And every morning she walked out of that bedroom carrying Maya's daughter like she'd been the one who spent 14 hours in labor. One night, she stood alone in front of the bedroom mirror, Maya's mirror, adjusting her gold earrings slowly, studying her reflection like she was making sure it wouldn't disappear. Adrian leaned against the doorway, watching her. "You've settled in fast," he said, half amused. Vanessa didn't turn. Her fingers paused briefly at her ear. "Do you know what it's like," she said quietly, "to always be the one men hide?" Adrian frowned. "What are you talking about?" She met her own eyes in the mirror, her voice calm, almost distant. "Being wanted, but never chosen." A small smile touched her lips. "Not soft, not sad. Certain. I don't wait to be chosen anymore." She reached for the perfume on the counter, Maya's, sprayed it lightly into the air, and walked past Adrian like the conversation had already ended. She even named the baby. Not officially. The birth certificate still listed the original name, but she started calling her Lyric, and Adrian started using it too, as if the child's real name, the one Maya had whispered into her ear the moment she was born, had already been erased. Gloria came by every single day, sometimes twice. She didn't knock. She walked in like the house was hers, and in a way, she acted like it was. She directed Maya like a servant. Clean the kitchen before lunch, iron the baby's clothes by hand. Vanessa prefers no wrinkles. Make dinner for 3 and set Maya's plate in the back room. She called Maya the girl to her face, and when Maya didn't respond fast enough, Gloria would turn to Vanessa and say, "See what I mean? No initiative, no drive, no gratitude." Vanessa smiled every time. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. She had Adrian, she had Gloria, she had the house, the baby, the story. The cruelty came in the form of comfort. Hers. She posted on social media every single day. Photos of the nursery with its soft white curtains and gold lettering on the wall. Photos of the baby sleeping on her chest. Photos of Adrian kissing her forehead while she held the child. Captions that read, "Motherhood is everything," and "This little girl changed my whole world." The comments poured in. Hundreds of them. "You're glowing. Best mom ever. That baby looks just like you. Your family is beautiful." Maya saw every post, every comment, every lie wrapped in a heart emoji and double-tapped by strangers who had no idea what they were celebrating. She said nothing. At night, after the house went quiet and everyone had gone to sleep, Maya would walk barefoot down the dark hallway and stand outside the nursery door. She wouldn't go in, she'd just stand there, listening, waiting to hear her daughter breathe. Sometimes the baby would stir and make a small sound, a soft little sigh or a tiny cry that lasted 2 seconds before it faded. And Maya's whole body would ache with a need so deep it made her teeth hurt. Every cell in her body screamed to pick that child up, but the door stayed closed, and Maya stayed on the other side of it. One evening, she tried. Vanessa was in the shower. Gloria had gone home for the night. Adrian was downstairs watching a game with the volume up, high enough to cover any sound. Maya turned the handle slowly. The lock hadn't been installed yet. That came later. The door opened, and for the first time since the hospital, she stood over her daughter's crib. She picked her up. She pressed the baby to her chest, felt the impossible warmth of her, The weight of her, the softness of her tiny hand gripping the fabric of Maya's shirt, like she recognized her. Like the body knew, even if the world didn't. Maya smelled the top of her head, kissed her temple, and cried so quietly that the sound didn't even leave her throat. Then the door opened. Gloria. She'd come back, forgot her purse on the kitchen counter, and now she stood in the nursery doorway, one hand on the frame, eyes narrow, jaw tight, staring at Maya, holding the baby like she'd caught a criminal in the middle of a crime. "Put the baby down." Maya didn't move. Gloria's voice dropped to something cold and flat. "I said put her down. You have no right to be in this room. You are not her mother. You are nothing in this house. And if I have to call the police to come remove you, I will. And I will tell them exactly what you are." Maya looked at the woman who had helped erase her from her own daughter's life. She looked at her for a long time, long enough for Gloria to shift her weight, long enough for the silence to become uncomfortable. Then, slowly, gently, she placed the baby back in the crib. She kissed her daughter's forehead, let her fingers rest on the baby's chest just long enough to feel one more heartbeat, and she left the room. Gloria called Adrian that night, told him Maya was unstable, that she'd been sneaking into the nursery, that she was a danger to the child, that something needed to be done before the situation escalated. Adrian didn't ask for Maya's side. He never did. The next morning, a lock appeared on the nursery door. A deadbolt, installed from the outside. A lock on the door, between a mother and her own child. That was the night Maya broke. Not loud, not dramatic, not in the way people expect women to break, with screaming and throwing and falling to their knees. She broke the way a bridge breaks, silently, under pressure that no one could see from the surface. She sat on the back porch in the dark, holding the copper locket in both hands, and cried. Not for minutes, for hours. The kind of crying that doesn't make noise because the pain is too deep for sound, too heavy for the body to process into anything the ears can register. Her milk still came in every few hours. Her body still reached for a baby that wasn't beside her. Every nerve, every instinct, every biological signal her body could send was screaming the same thing. Your child needs you. And she couldn't answer. She sat on that porch until the sky turned gray, until the birds started up, until the neighbor's porch light clicked off, and then she stopped crying. She went inside, washed her face, dried her hands, picked up a prepaid phone she'd kept hidden in the lining of her suitcase since before the baby was born. She'd bought it months ago, activated it in a parking lot, never used it once, until now. She dialed one number. The person on the other end picked up on the first ring. No greeting, no small talk. Maya said 5 words. It's time. Start with the hospital. Then she hung up, slid the phone back into its hiding place, and walked into the kitchen to make breakfast for people who didn't deserve a single crumb from her table. But everything had changed, and they had no idea. The cruelty didn't slow down after that. It accelerated, like they could sense something shifting and wanted to tighten their grip before they lost it. Adrian stopped speaking to Maya altogether, not out of guilt. He didn't have any. Not out of shame. He simply stopped seeing her. She'd walk into the room and he'd look past her like she was furniture, like she was part of the wall. If she spoke, he'd turn to Vanessa and say, "Did you hear something?" And Vanessa would flash that thin, satisfied smile and shake her head. Nothing, just the wind. They laughed at their own cruelty like it was an inside joke. And maybe it was. Gloria started bringing paperwork, official-looking documents she'd had drawn up through a family attorney who owed her a favor. Custody arrangements, guardianship papers. She sat with Adrian and Vanessa at the dining table one afternoon and walked them through a plan to have Maya's name removed entirely from the birth certificate and replaced with Vanessa's. "We list Vanessa as the biological mother," Gloria said, tapping the page with a manicured nail. "Keep it clean. No complications." Adrian signed without reading. Vanessa signed with a smile so wide it reached her earrings. Maya stood in the hallway and watched through the open doorway. They didn't close it. They didn't lower their voices. They didn't care if she saw. That was the cruelest part. They wanted her to watch. They wanted her to stand in that hallway and witness her own child being signed away in broad daylight at the kitchen table over a plate of Gloria's leftover pasta, and there was nothing she could do about it. At least, that's what they believed. One afternoon, Vanessa found Maya's copper locket. Maya had left it on the bathroom counter for 30 seconds while she washed her face. Vanessa picked it up, held it between two fingers like it was something she'd found stuck to the bottom of her shoe, and brought it to the dinner table. "What is this?" she said, dangling it for everyone to see. "You're still wearing this rusty little thing?" Gloria leaned in and squinted. "Is that real copper? Looks like something from a yard sale." Vanessa laughed, a high, sharp laugh that bounced off the kitchen walls. "That's the difference between us, I guess. Some people hold on to junk and call it sentimental." Adrian didn't look up from his plate, didn't defend it, didn't say a word. Maya walked over. She didn't speak, didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. She reached across the table, took the locket from Vanessa's hand with a grip that was soft but final, and put it back around her neck. Her fingers were steady. Her eyes were dry. She turned and walked back to her room without a single word. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Gloria shook her head. Adrian kept eating. None of them noticed that the phone Maya kept charging in the corner of the kitchen for 3 days didn't have a charging light. That small red dot on the screen wasn't a battery indicator. It was a recording light, and it had been running since Tuesday. Meanwhile, something was moving beneath the surface of that house that none of them could see, touch, or stop. Attorneys, private investigators, forensic accountants, digital surveillance specialists. A team of 12 people Maya had assembled through a single encrypted phone call was now working around the clock in a law office downtown that none of them knew existed. Hospital surveillance footage from the night of the delivery had already been subpoenaed. Every angle, every hallway camera, every second from the moment Adrian lifted that baby off Maya's chest to the moment she was wheeled out of the recovery suite. The original wristband records had been pulled from the hospital's intake system. The nurse who replaced Maya's bracelet had been identified and interviewed. Her written statement was already signed. Every social media post Vanessa had made, every photo, every caption, every tagged location, every comment she'd responded to, had been archived, time-stamped, screenshotted, and logged as evidence of a sustained and deliberate campaign to claim another woman's child as her own. The custody papers Gloria had pushed through the family attorney, filed with false information. The document listed Vanessa as the biological mother. It listed Maya's name nowhere. That wasn't a clerical error. That was fraud. Clean, traceable, prosecutable fraud. The kind that carries prison time in the state they lived in. Maya's legal team didn't just prepare a case. They built a fortress, emergency custody motions, divorce filings with full asset recovery clauses, restraining orders with immediate enforcement dates, property reclamation documents that traced every dollar Adrian had ever spent back to accounts Maya controlled. Every car, every mortgage payment, every tuition installment for the business degree he loved to brag about at dinner parties. All of it, hers. Everything was sealed. Everything was timed. Everything was waiting for one single moment. And that moment was 3 days away. Adrian had been talking about the gala for weeks. The Grand Piedmont Hotel, a black-tie charity event that drew Fortune 500 executives, media personalities, real estate developers, old money, new money, and the kind of people who measured each other by the table number they were assigned. He bought Vanessa a new gown for the occasion, custom-fitted, deep emerald green with a slit that caught the light when she walked. Gloria wore silver. Adrian wore a tailored black suit with a pocket square that matched Vanessa's dress. They arrived together in a town car. They looked like a family. They looked like a magazine cover. Adrian introduced Vanessa to everyone as his wife. She smiled, shook hands, told stories about the baby that weren't hers to tell. How the baby slept through the night, how she had Adrian's eyes, how motherhood was the greatest gift she'd ever received. And every person in that room smiled back and believed every word because nobody had any reason not to. The evening moved through dinner, speeches, live music, a silent auction. It was elegant, polished, choreographed. The kind of event where nobody raised their voice and everyone said exactly the right thing at exactly the right time. Vanessa adjusted the fabric of her emerald gown for the third time in less than a minute. The smile on her face never slipped, but her fingers wouldn't stay still. "Relax," Adrian murmured. "You look perfect." "I know," she said too quickly. Her gaze drifted toward the entrance. Just once. Then again. A flicker, subtle, almost invisible. Like something in the room hadn't happened yet, but was about to. She straightened her shoulders, forcing the moment down, sealing it behind that same flawless smile. Then the host returned to the stage. He adjusted the microphone, loosened his bow tie, and smiled like a man who was about to enjoy what came next. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special moment tonight. Our largest single donor this evening has requested a few minutes to address the room personally." A pause. "And I have to tell you, when I saw the name on the check..." He let out a soft breath, shaking his head slightly. "I had to sit down." Polite laughter from the crowd. The ballroom doors opened. Maya walked in. The room didn't shift. It stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. Chairs creaked as people turned to see who had just entered the room like she owned the building. Because, as it turned out, the holding company that owned the hotel was one of hers. She wore black, floor-length. A gown that moved like liquid shadow, so simple it made everything else in the room look like it was trying too hard. No diamonds, no gold, no jewelry except the copper locket resting against her collarbone. Her hair was pulled back, her shoulders were set. Her eyes swept the room once and found the only three faces that mattered. Behind her walked two attorneys in dark suits, a private security detail of 4, and a legal aide carrying a slim black leather folder. Adrian saw her first. His champagne glass froze in the air. His lips parted, but nothing came out. Vanessa grabbed his arm. Gloria leaned forward in her chair and whispered through clenched teeth, "What is she doing here?" Maya walked to the stage. She didn't rush, didn't hesitate. She climbed the 3 short stairs, adjusted the microphone to her height, and looked out at a room full of the most powerful people in the city. Then she spoke. "My name is Maya Elaine Cartwright." Someone at table 4 set their glass down hard enough to crack the stem. Some of you may recognize the Cartwright name. Not because I've been in the press. I haven't. But because my holding companies have quietly provided the digital infrastructure for more than half the technology platforms represented in this room tonight. I'm the founder and sole owner of Cartwright Enterprises. The silence that followed was physical. It had weight. People stopped chewing, stopped breathing. Phones slid out of pockets. Someone at the back of the room stood up for a better view. Adrian's face went pale. Maya continued. Her voice didn't crack, didn't waver, didn't rise. It stayed exactly where it had been since the first word. Steady, measured, devastating. I'm not here tonight to talk about business. I'm here because 6 weeks ago, in a hospital 20 minutes from where we're sitting, I gave birth to my daughter. And within 1 hour of that child entering the world, my husband took her from my arms, handed her to another woman, and told the medical staff that I was the maid. A gasp moved through the room like a wave. His mother told the nurses I was mentally unfit. A woman I had never met was placed in the private recovery suite with my baby and given full access while I was retagged as household staff and moved to a shared ward where I bled alone for 2 days. The murmur became a roar, held at a whisper. Heads turned. Eyes found Adrian. Someone at his table stood up and moved away, like proximity was a crime. Maya raised one hand. The screen behind her lit up. Hospital surveillance footage. Not edited, not narrated. Just raw, time-stamped video. Adrian lifting the newborn from Maya's chest, carrying her to Vanessa, speaking to the head nurse. Gloria at the station, leaning in, whispering. The nurse replacing Maya's wristband. A wheelchair rolling Maya out of the room while Vanessa reclined in the recovery suite with a baby that wasn't hers and a smile that said she'd already won. The footage played for 90 seconds. Nobody looked away. Vanessa pushed her chair back and stood. Adrian grabbed her wrist. "Sit down," he whispered, his voice strangled. She yanked free and stepped back. Gloria didn't move. Her fingers gripped the edge of the white tablecloth like it was the edge of a cliff. Maya spoke one last time. "In this folder are 3 documents. The first is a court-approved emergency custody order granting me sole legal and physical custody of my daughter, effective immediately. The second is a divorce filing with full asset recovery. Because every dollar in my husband's account, every piece of property in his name, and every car in his garage was purchased with my money, through my companies, under my authority. The third is a formal fraud complaint, because the woman at Table 9 signed legal documents falsely identifying herself as the biological mother of my child." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Somebody at the back of the room was crying and didn't seem to know it. Maya looked directly at Adrian. For the first time in 6 weeks, she let him see her eyes. Not broken, not bleeding, not begging. Clear, steady, aimed. "You told them I was just the maid," she said, "but the maid built everything you're standing on." She stepped off the stage. She didn't look back. Her security detail closed around her. Her attorneys fell into step behind her. The ballroom erupted. Whispers, gasps, the screech of chairs pushing back, Adrian shouting her name across the room like the sound of his voice could undo what had just happened. It couldn't. Vanessa was already gone. Side door, heels clicking fast on marble. Gloria sat frozen in her chair, mouth open, eyes locked on the screen where the footage had paused on a single frame. Vanessa holding the baby, smiling while Maya was wheeled away in the background with her arms still reaching. Maya walked through the lobby, past the valet stand, and into a black car waiting at the curb. The door closed, the car pulled away, and she was gone before Adrian made it past the coat check. Everything collapsed fast, faster than Adrian thought possible, faster than Gloria could strategize, faster than Vanessa could run. Within 72 hours of the gala, Adrian received the full divorce filing. Every asset he believed was his. The house, the car, the investment account, the vacation condo, the watch collection, the retirement fund, all traced directly back to Maya's holdings. She had been the source of everything, every deposit, every mortgage payment, every tuition installment for the business degree he used as a talking point at networking events. All of it flowed from accounts she controlled through companies he didn't even know existed. The house was reclaimed within 30 days. Locks changed. Movers arrived on a Tuesday morning while Adrian was out trying to meet with a lawyer who kept canceling because 3 of the firm's biggest clients ran contracts through Cartwright Enterprises subsidiaries, and nobody wanted to touch the other side. His company let him go 2 weeks after the gala. Quietly. No press release, no meeting, with a severance number and a non-disclosure agreement. Nobody said it was about the video, but the video was all anyone in the building had talked about for 14 days. It had been viewed 4 million times before he'd even woken up the morning after. Adrian called Maya 41 times in the first week alone. She never answered, not once. He left voicemails that started angry and ended desperate. He said she was being unfair. He said she'd blindsided him. He said he didn't know. He said he was sorry. He said he loved her. He said she'd ruined his life. He said he'd change. He said everything a man says when the ground disappears from under him, and he realizes, too late, that the woman he treated like nothing was the foundation he was standing on. She didn't respond to a single one. He moved into Gloria's one-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city. The same apartment Gloria had lived in for 20 years before Maya's money had quietly paid for everything that made Gloria feel like she was somebody. The dinners, the designer bags, the vacation, the new furniture in the living room, the bragging rights at her book club. All of it gone. Traced back to the woman she'd called the girl. Vanessa disappeared the night of the gala. She didn't say goodbye to Adrian, didn't leave a note, didn't answer a single call. She took whatever fit in one bag, emptied the joint spending account Adrian had set up for her, which held less than $400 because every real dollar had already been frozen and reclaimed, and left the state. Last anyone heard, she was staying with a cousin somewhere in Florida, posting beach photos with no captions, deleting comments that mentioned the gala and pretending the last year of her life had been a dream she could simply choose not to remember. The fraud complaint moved through the courts faster than anyone expected. Vanessa's signature on the custody alteration documents was enough to open a criminal investigation. Gloria's involvement was flagged as a co-conspirator. The family attorney she'd used was disbarred before the year was out. 2 nurses at the hospital were formally suspended pending a full internal review. The hospital issued a public statement describing the incident as an administrative error compounded by a failure in protocol. Nobody believed it. But it was all they were willing to say. Maya didn't comment on any of it, didn't do a single interview, didn't release a statement, didn't post online. The most powerful woman most of them had ever been in the same room with simply went quiet again. Like she'd said everything she needed to say in 3 minutes on a stage and saw no reason to repeat herself. Gloria sat alone in her apartment the week after Adrian moved in. She stared at the framed photograph she'd kept on the living room shelf for months. Adrian and Vanessa at a dinner party, dressed in silk and linen, smiling like the world was built for them. She used to show that photo to her friends, used to brag about her son's beautiful wife and successful life. Now she looked at it and saw the truth. The clothes were bought with Maya's money. The dinner was at a restaurant Maya's company owned. The car they drove there was leased through an account Maya funded. Every single piece of the life Gloria had been so proud of had been built, funded, and maintained by the woman she had once stood over in a nursery and said, "You are nothing in this house." She didn't call Maya. She knew better. There was nothing left to say that the silence hadn't already said louder. Adrian's voicemail stopped after the 6th week. The last one was 30 seconds of dead air followed by one sentence. "I didn't know." He was right. He didn't know, and that was exactly the point. 6 months later, a quiet property on the outskirts of the city, not a mansion, not a penthouse, not a compound behind a gate with cameras and guards, a simple house with a wraparound porch, a yard that needed mowing, and a garden along the fence line that Nettie would have dropped to her knees and wept over. Maya sat on the porch swing in the late afternoon light, her daughter in her arms. The baby was bigger now, babbling, reaching for everything, grabbing at Maya's collar, gripping her finger and refusing to let go, like she was making up for every night they'd spent on opposite sides of a locked door. The copper locket hung between them. The baby reached for it, touched the warm metal with her tiny fingers, and smiled like she'd found something precious, something that belonged to her. And it did. Maya hadn't gone public again after the gala. She didn't do press, didn't do interviews, didn't accept invitations to panels or podcasts or the 100 events that suddenly wanted her name in their guest list. She went back to exactly what she'd always been. Quiet, powerful, invisible by choice. Her companies still ran. Her foundation still funded schools and clinics and scholarship programs in communities that looked like the one she'd come from, but her name stayed out of the headlines, just the way she wanted. She hadn't remarried, hadn't started dating, hadn't opened that door yet. She wasn't closed off. She was still. The kind of still that comes after a long storm when the rain finally stops and the air smells clean and you realize for the first time in months that you can hear yourself think again. A letter arrived one morning, brown envelope, no return address. But she recognized the handwriting the moment she picked it up from the mat. Adrian. She opened it at the kitchen table while her daughter played on the floor beside her, chewing on a wooden block and making sounds that filled the house with a music no instrument could replicate. Maya read the first line of the letter. Then she set it down. She didn't finish it. Didn't need to. Whatever he had written, the apology, the explanation, the plea, the regret, it didn't change anything, not because she was bitter, not because she couldn't forgive, but because she had already walked past the chapter he was still trapped in, and going back to read his version of it served nothing. She picked up her daughter, walked back to the porch, and sat in the swing as the sun dropped low and gold behind the tree line. The copper locket caught the light. Inside it, 2 photographs now sat side by side. The first, Nettie, standing in front of the first house she ever cleaned. Apron on, hands folded, eyes steady, spine straight, and next to it, a new one. A tiny hospital photo of a baby girl, taken the day she was born, before anyone had the chance to take her away. 2 women, 2 beginnings, 1 unbroken line. Maya closed her eyes. The baby rested her head against Maya's shoulder. The swing rocked slowly. The garden swayed. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, the world was quiet enough to hear what peace actually sounds like. Some people mistake your silence for surrender. They see you standing still and think you've given up. They see you holding back and think you've got nothing left. Let them. Let them underestimate you. Let them write you off. Let them call you the maid, the girl, the staff, the nobody. Because the ones who stay quiet the longest are usually the ones carrying the most weight. And when they finally set it down, the world doesn't just notice. It shifts. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs that reminder today. Subscribe for more stories where silence isn't weakness. It's power, timing, and truth. And tell me in the comments, which moment made you feel it the most?